Chapter 1. In my previous life, my best friend Isabel was the darling of the entertainment world, a superstar adored by millions. And me? I was one of the top makeup artists in the industry, someone everyone sought after. But everything fell apart when I did something so small, so seemingly insignificant. I helped a young actress from the same company as Isabel, someone who was quietly competing against her with her makeup for an event. That actress caught the attention of the influential lead actor everyone was vying for, and just like that, Isabel decided I had betrayed her. She never forgave me. At her Best Actress award ceremony, while the cameras flashed and the world cheered for her, she turned on me. Isabel accused me of controlling her life and using cheap, harmful makeup on her. Her fans, a rabid, mindless army, came after me online, tearing my life apart piece by piece. Their harassment was relentless. In a haze of despair, I lost my footing and fell from a building. When I opened my eyes again, I was no longer in that world of betrayal and heartbreak. I had somehow returned to the past. Hannah, do you think my makeup today is enough to catch Phineas's attention? Her voice jolted me back to the present. Isabel was looking at me expectantly, her youthful face free of the arrogance and cruelty she would one day wield like a weapon. For now, she was still innocent, or at least, she looked like it. I stared at her for a moment, the memories of my tragic accident still fresh in my mind. She wasn't yet the commanding, manipulative Best Actress who had crushed me. And I wasn't yet the celebrated makeup artist who would sacrifice everything for her. I let out a slow, steady breath, forcing the bitterness down. "Your makeup looks good today," I replied, my tone deliberately mild. It was a question she had asked me once before in my past life. Back then, I had taken a closer look and noticed something troubling. Her makeup had been done with low-quality, harmful products. When I tried to warn her, she brushed me off, saying the look had been created by Anmi, one of the most sought-after makeup artists in the industry at the time. Isabel had begged for weeks to get an appointment with her. That night was a big event, one attended by some of the biggest names in the entertainment world, including Phineas, the man Isabel was desperate to impress. But I couldn't let her walk into that room with makeup that could damage her skin. After a lot of arguing and some very pointed explanations, I finally convinced her to take it off, though she did so grudgingly. Time was short, and she didn't trust me to redo it. By the time we found another makeup artist who could step in, all they had time for was a simple, unremarkable look. I tried to reassure her, telling her that talent and effort mattered more than appearances. What I didn't know was that, even as Isabel thanked me, she was already starting to resent me. She blamed me for ruining her perfect look. And when Ethan didn't pay her any attention that night, she decided it was all my fault. Even when Anmi's harmful practices were exposed, when it came out that her products had left countless celebrities with disfigured, infected skin, Isabel still saw me as the villain. She held on to the belief that if I hadn't intervened, she would have won Phineas's heart that night. Now, hearing my compliment, Isabel's expression lit up with smug satisfaction. "Well, of course it does. Do you even know who did my makeup today? None other than the legendary Anmi." She gave me a sideways glance, her tone dripping with condescension. "Hannah, if you ever want to reach Anmi's level, you've got a long way to go." I almost laughed out loud. Anmi? The so-called legend who, in my past life, had destroyed the careers of so many stars. Her work might have looked flawless at first, but the damage her products caused would show up later: skin infections, scarring, and irreversible damage. Some celebrities had to step away from the industry entirely, losing contracts and paying massive penalties for projects they couldn't complete. In my past life, Isabel had been one of the lucky ones. Because of me, she avoided that disaster. She had a crucial web series shoot coming up next week. It wasn't a major role, but it was the project that would eventually launch her career. If her face had been ruined, she would have never gotten that chance. But Isabel didn't know that or care. She continued to gloat. "If tonight goes well and Phineas notices me, I'll hire Anmi as my personal makeup artist. No matter how much it costs." She paused and then added with a fake smile. "And Hannah, if you want, I could even ask her to give you a few tips. You could learn a lot." Her words were laced with mock kindness, But her eyes betrayed her amusement. She was enjoying this. In my past life, I had thought Isabel was my closest friend. Even after she became a star, I stayed by her side, supporting her through everything. When her lack of discipline began to show, her weight fluctuating, her skin breaking out, I was the one who helped her get back on track. I gave up my own career to manage her image, making sure she stayed flawless in the public eye. Under my guidance, Isabel soared to the top, becoming a queen of the silver screen. And how did she thank me? By accusing me of controlling her, sabotaging her, and ruining her life. Her lies destroyed me. But this time, things will be different. This time, I'll protect myself. And if Isabel dares to cross me again, I'll make sure she pays for it. Chapter 2. Isabel, why did you send Anmi away? The sharp, accusing voice snapped me out of my thoughts. I looked up to see Jolene standing there, her expression dark and stormy. Jolene. Back then, Isabel had pulled this exact stunt. She'd made sure Anmi, her makeup artist for the night, finished her look first and then conveniently dismissed her, claiming she needed to rest. The real reason, of course, was to leave Jolene stranded without a makeup artist, forcing her to show up at the event looking less than her best. It was a petty move, but that was Isabel in a nutshell, always scheming, always bitter. She'd been in the industry for years by that point, but her lack of discipline and inability to make good on the opportunities handed to her had kept her career stagnant. The company had poured resources into her, hoping to turn her into a rising star, but nothing worked. It wasn't until I stepped in crafting her image, guiding her career, and practically dragging her to success that Isabel finally became the household name she'd always dreamed of being. The only reason Isabel's company hadn't dropped her yet was because she had connections, friends in high places who kept her afloat despite her lackluster career. And tonight, even after pulling this childish stunt, Jolene couldn't do anything about it. To avoid any backlash or whispers, Isabel had casually volunteered me to do Jolene's makeup. Hannah will take care of it, she said with a sugary smile before leaving me behind with a frustrated Jolene. Jolene was stuck. With no other options, she reluctantly sat down and let me get to work. What she didn't expect, though, was how skilled I was. Within minutes, I had transformed her into a vision of elegance, stunning, radiant, and impossible to ignore. That night, Jolene managed to turn heads and even caught the attention of Phineas, striking up a conversation that could open doors for her career. Meanwhile, Isabel stood off to the side, watching it all unfold. She couldn't resist stirring the pot. Anmi left early to rest, Isabel said with a lazy shrug, her tone dripping with mock innocence. It's not my fault you didn't get here sooner. Don't play dumb with me, Isabel. Jolene's voice trembled, barely masking her anger. You did this on purpose. Isabel just smirked, arms crossed. She knew as well as Jolene did that nothing could touch her. Jolene clenched her fists, her frustration palpable, but she had no choice but to swallow it. She knew exactly what this was about. This wasn't just a petty inconvenience, it was payback. Jolene had recently landed the third female lead in a major web drama, a role that was supposed to go to Isabel. The company had planned to use the role to boost Isabel's career, but the director had insisted on casting Jolene instead. To make up for it, Isabel had been given a smaller role as compensation, but she wasn't satisfied. Since then, she'd been making Jolene's life miserable, sabotaging her at every turn. Tonight was just the latest example, deliberately scheduling Jolene to arrive late, ensuring Anmi would leave before Jolene got there, setting her up to fail in front of the industry's biggest players. Isabel's smirk widened. What can I say? If Anmi wanted to leave, that was her decision. I can't force her to stay. And then, because she couldn't help herself, Isabel added with a mocking laugh. But hey, I'm not heartless. I even called my best friend to help you out. You should be thanking me. Before Jolene could say another word, Isabel grabbed me by the arm and pushed me forward. Here she is. My wonderful, talented friend. She'll fix you up in no time. I stood there, staring at both of them, Jolene, fuming but powerless, and Isabel, smug and satisfied. It didn't matter if it was in my past life or this one. Isabel always found a way to use me, always made me clean up her messes. In my previous life, I'd done exactly what she wanted. I'd helped Jolene, despite my reluctance, and created one of my best looks for her that night. Jolene had walked into the event looking like an absolute goddess, turning heads and leaving Isabel fuming in the background. But when my life fell apart, when Isabel's lies turned the public against me, Jolene didn't repay the favor. No, she made it worse. I still remember the social media post she put out during the height of my scandal. She'd written about how she'd witnessed my supposed manipulation of Isabel, painting me as a controlling, toxic force in Isabel's life. She called Isabel a victim and expressed her sympathy for her, all while condemning me in front of the entire industry. Her words only added fuel to the fire. The harassment against me grew tenfold. My personal information was leaked online, and my phone wouldn't stop ringing with hateful messages and threats. People showed up at my door, vandalizing my home and screaming insults. Social media was flooded with cruel, degrading comments. Those days were a nightmare I could never forget. And now, here I was again. Standing in the same room as the two women who had destroyed me before: Isabel, the schemer who always used me to her advantage, and Jolene, the opportunist who had gladly thrown me under the bus when it suited her. Anger bubbled just beneath the surface, but I forced myself to stay calm. I couldn't afford to lose control. Not now. If Isabel or Jolene wanted to crush me, they wouldn't even have to break a sweat. That's why I needed to rise above them. Until I found a way to grow stronger, my fate would always be in their hands just like before. What's the deal, Isabel? Jolene snapped, her voice sharp with frustration. You're having her, a random makeup assistant, and your so-called best friend, do my makeup? Who knows what kind of tricks you're trying to pull? Her eyes flicked to the badge clipped to my shirt that read Assistant Makeup Artist, and I could feel the disdain radiating off her. Clearly unimpressed, she didn't bother hiding her irritation as she turned back to Isabel. Isabel, of course, couldn't have cared less. She shrugged with a smirk. Honestly, you should be thankful someone's even willing to help you. Then, as if she hadn't just dropped a bomb and walked away, she checked her watch and waved us off. I don't have time for this nonsense. I've got better things to do. And just like that, she spun on her heel and disappeared, leaving me alone with Jolene. I watched her go, my gaze lingering on her perfectly made-up face. It was ironic, really. Isabel had no idea that the cheap makeup she used was ruining her skin bit by bit. That thought gave me an idea. Instead of giving her the stunning, head-turning look I was capable of, I deliberately held back. The result? Plain. Passable. The kind of makeup no one would bother looking twice at. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't good enough to make her stand out either. I'd barely used a fraction of my skills. In my last life, things had gone differently. After this same event, Jolene had come to me in private, eager to hire me as her personal makeup artist. She'd even let it slip that Phineas had approached her that night purely because her makeup had caught his eye. But now, without my help, she wouldn't have that spark. And that could only mean one thing: Isabel's chances of catching Phineas's attention had just gone up. That suited me just fine. If Isabel managed to impress him tonight, she'd finally be able to hire Anne, the backstabbing makeup artist she'd been dying to poach. But Isabel didn't realize what she was getting herself into. Anne's methods might make her look good in the short term, but in the long run, they were a disaster. The products she used were harsh and cheap, and Isabel's face would pay the price for it soon enough. Once her looks started to deteriorate, Isabel would have her hands full just trying to salvage her career. She wouldn't have the time or the energy to come after me anymore. As for Jolene, I'd already decided not to waste another ounce of effort on her. She'd proven herself to be ungrateful and self-serving, and I had no interest in helping her again. When Jolene finally caught sight of her reflection, her expression twisted with frustration. Her gaze flicked between her face and Isabel's flawless, polished look. The comparison was obvious, and it wasn't in her favor. You call yourself a makeup artist? She sneered, her voice dripping with venom. Look at me, I look boring. Just wait. You'll regret this. I met her glare with a calm smile, completely unfazed by her threats. What could she really do to me? My badge still reads assistant makeup artist. Her expectations couldn't have been that high, and as far as everyone else was concerned, I was still Isabel's loyal best friend. Jolene wouldn't dare go after me directly, not when she and Isabel were both signed to the same company, a company owned by Isabel's boyfriend Nathan. For now, I was safe. But I wasn't just thinking about survival anymore. I had bigger plans. Chapter 3. As I mulled over my thoughts, my phone buzzed with a new message. Come by my place tonight. The sender? Nathan. Before you get the wrong idea, no, I wasn't sneaking around with my best friend's boyfriend. My role was far less exciting. I was just the middleman, the convenient bridge that kept their secret relationship intact. Years ago, Isabel had sunk her claws into Nathan, a wealthy heir who seemed to exist solely to bankroll her ambitions. But Isabel was smart. She knew better than to go public with their relationship. Dating in the entertainment industry was like playing with fire, especially for a rising actress. So, she came up with a cover story. I would pretend to be Nathan's girlfriend. Every message Nathan sent me was really meant for her. He never saw me, not really. I was just a name on a screen, a shield to protect their little secret. In my past life, I couldn't figure out why Isabel insisted on hiding their relationship. Nathan was rich, obscenely so. He could have easily supported her, even if she left the industry entirely. Why go through all this trouble? It wasn't until the very end, right before my accident, that the truth finally clicked. Nathan was never the prize. Isabel's sights had always been set higher on Phineas, the industry's golden boy, the actor every woman dreamed of. Nathan? He was just a stepping stone, a disposable rung on the ladder to her ultimate goal. And me? I was just another tool in her arsenal. That's why, in my past life, Isabel hated me so much. She blamed me for ruining her chances of getting closer to Phineas. Even after clawing her way to the top, winning awards and earning the title of Best Actress, she still couldn't win Phineas's heart. And somehow, that became my fault. Her bitterness festered, her anger twisted into something darker, and in the end, she directed it all at me. She made sure I paid the price for her unfulfilled dreams. Looking back, all I can think is that Isabel is insane. But this time, things are going to be different. In this life, I'm not going to sit around while they use me like a pawn. Everyone who hurt me will pay, starting with Isabel and her loyal lapdog, Nathan. I'm cutting ties with him completely. No more playing along with their charade. No more being their scapegoat. Nathan wasn't innocent in my downfall. Isabel's accusations against me in my past life weren't just about me controlling her or sabotaging her with cheap makeup. She also claimed I turned a blind eye while my so-called boyfriend, Nathan, harassed her. She even leaked a few carefully chosen screenshots of our chats. Nathan's username was heavily censored, of course, but the implication was clear enough. The internet, predictably, exploded. Isabel, with her polished image and carefully crafted narrative, had the public eating out of her hand. They believed every word. No one questioned Nathan's role in the story. Isabel made sure of that. She steered the conversation so that all the blame landed squarely on me. Meanwhile, Nathan's family's entertainment company worked overtime to fan the flames. They pushed the narrative that Isabel was a victim, a brave, resilient star who had endured my supposed abuse. I, on the other hand, was painted as some controlling, conniving villain who had tried to destroy her. Even after Isabel dumped Nathan before winning her Best Actress award, he still wasn't over her. In a desperate attempt to win her back, he turned his attention to me. He leaked my personal information online, throwing me to the wolves in a pathetic bid to get back in her good graces. But Isabel didn't care. She was too busy chasing after Phineas to even notice him. Nathan didn't exist to her anymore. His rejection and humiliation only fueled his anger. He made it his mission to ruin me, and he succeeded. The fallout was catastrophic. My personal details spread like wildfire. My family, unable to handle the harassment, cut ties with me entirely. I was left completely alone, abandoned by everyone I had ever cared about. The constant abuse, the endless threats, the isolation, it all became too much. My mind was a fog of pain and despair, and one day, I lost my footing. That's how it ended. My life, my story was cut short because of their lies. Propose to her tonight after the gala. Make it public. I typed the message quickly, read it over once, and hit send without a second thought. Nathan was so hopelessly in love with Isabel that I knew he'd do exactly as I told him. No hesitation, no questions asked. Isabel didn't want their relationship to go public. Well, too bad. If she wanted to keep it a secret, I'd just have to force her hand. Once she and Nathan were officially tied together, she'd lose any leverage she had to throw dirt on me. I couldn't help but smirk, already picturing the look on Isabel's face tonight like she'd just swallowed a bitter pill. Honestly, I was looking forward to it. Just as I was relishing the thought, my phone lit up with a new notification. A trending topic had just shot to the top of the charts. Breaking, Phineas spotted with rising starlet. Shocker! Isabel and Phineas at the gala. I stared at the headlines, my fingers hovering over the screen. I didn't even need to think to know this was Isabel's handiwork. So, she'd actually managed to get close to Phineas. That was unexpected. Up until now, I'd only been hoping she'd make a move on him. I wasn't entirely sure she'd pull it off, but somehow she had. Now that she'd succeeded, there was no doubt in my mind what her next move would be: hiring that backstabbing makeup artist, Anmi. In my previous life, this was about the time Anmi was desperately searching for a new client. She'd already ruined the faces of several other celebrities, though none of them dared to reveal the damage publicly. They were all just biding their time, waiting for their faces to heal before taking her down. Anmi was desperate, and Isabel was reckless. It was a match made in hell. I had no doubt Anmi would jump at the chance to work with Isabel. And when that happened, it would be chaos. The two of them would tear each other apart. It was only a matter of time. Out of curiosity, I refreshed the trending page, expecting to see more updates about Isabel and Phineas. But to my surprise, the headlines had vanished. It was as if they'd never existed in the first place. The takedown had been so quick, so seamless, that for a moment, I wondered if I'd imagined it. Before I could process what had just happened, a new trending topic exploded onto the scene, instantly taking the top spot. Isabel gets proposed to. I froze, staring at my screen in disbelief. Everything was happening way too fast. I clicked on the headline, and sure enough, there it was, a video of Nathan proposing to Isabel. And Isabel? She was smiling, but it was a strained, awkward smile, like she was trying not to cry. I couldn't stop myself from laughing out loud. She must have thought she was so close to winning it all, risking everything to get close to Phineas, only to have her relationship with Nathan dragged out into the spotlight moments later. The comments under the video were overflowing with congratulations. I didn't even need to guess to know this was Nathan's entertainment company working overtime behind the scenes. The way everyone was gushing about how sweet and romantic the proposal was, despite Isabel's expression looking like she'd just eaten something foul, had Nathan's fingerprints all over it. I was still chuckling when, out of nowhere, someone snatched my phone right out of my hand. Before I could react, a sharp slap landed across my face. The sting spread instantly, a hot, burning pain that left me reeling. Chapter 4. You snake! You're the one who told Nathan to propose, aren't you? Isabel's face was right in front of mine, twisted in rage, her eyes wild and full of malice. It was like she wanted to tear me apart with her bare hands. My cheek still burned from the slap, but I forced myself to keep calm. Instead of lashing out, I played the part she expected, pitiful and apologetic. I didn't know Nathan was going to do that. I said, my voice soft and trembling as if I were genuinely upset. Her expression shifted slightly, just for a moment. She didn't believe me, not entirely, but she wasn't sure either. Of course, it was hard for her to wrap her head around the idea that I'd suddenly grown a spine. After all, I'd always been her loyal little helper, doing whatever she wanted without question. Before my last life ended in betrayal, I really did think I was doing the right thing by helping her. I thought we were friends. But Isabel? She was nothing but a backstabber, a wolf in sheep's clothing. I looked her in the eye and added carefully, maybe Nathan just couldn't wait any longer. He's always wanted to go public with your relationship, hasn't he? And that part was true. Nathan had been throwing his company's resources behind Isabel for years, practically carrying her career on his back. But no matter how much he tried, Isabel still hadn't become the star she wanted to be. At least, not yet. Now that her career was finally picking up momentum, Nathan was desperate to lock her down. He'd been asking her for years to announce their relationship, trying to tie her success to him before she got too big to need him. But Isabel? She'd never agree to something like that. Nathan was just a useful idiot to her, nothing more. Her real goal was someone much bigger. They'd fought about it more times than I could count, but Nathan always backed down in the end. He was the ultimate doormat. And honestly, I was done with both of them. These two deserved each other, but I wanted nothing to do with their mess anymore. Really? Isabel asked suspiciously, narrowing her eyes at me. You're not lying to me? Her uncertainty was plain to see. She wasn't entirely sure if I'd betrayed her, but she couldn't let go of her anger either. And now, with her plans to cozy up to Phineas falling apart, she needed someone to take it out on. She couldn't vent her frustration at Nathan, yet he was still too useful, so I'd become her target. I pretended not to notice her anger and continued. I mean, I even saw that trending topic earlier about you and Phineas. But it disappeared so quickly. Do you think Nathan got jealous? Maybe that's why he pulled this stunt. To force you into going public with him? I was making up lies as I went, but I didn't hesitate for a second. With a few well-placed words, I shifted all the blame onto Nathan. Of course, Nathan must have already told Isabel that I'd suggested the proposal. But she wasn't completely convinced yet. If she was, we wouldn't still be having this conversation. Thankfully, Nathan and I always deleted our messages after talking. Without any solid proof, Isabel couldn't pin anything on me. Her eyes burned with fury, but it wasn't directed at me anymore. No, all her anger was now focused on Nathan. She'd been so close to getting what she wanted. She'd finally managed to get Phineas's attention, even buying a trending spot to push the narrative of their romantic encounter at the gala. And then Nathan had ruined everything. But Isabel wasn't the type to let anyone stand in her way. If Nathan wanted to play games, she'd have no problem cutting him loose the second he stopped being useful. Her expression softened almost instantly, and she turned to me with a sweet, apologetic smile. Hannah, I'm sorry, she said, her voice suddenly gentle. I was so mad, I wasn't thinking straight. I shouldn't have taken it out on you. Her tone was kind, but I knew better. This wasn't an apology, it was damage control. You understand, right? Please don't take it personally. And whatever you do, don't tell Nathan about this, okay? She added, her voice dripping with fake sincerity. I let out a soft sigh, as if I were still hurt, and nodded. Of course. It's fine. I won't say anything to him. Then, after a pause, I added casually. Oh, by the way, I've already handed in my resignation. What? Isabel blinked, caught off guard by the sudden announcement. I'm planning to interview at another company soon. I said lightly as if it were no big deal. She barely reacted, which didn't surprise me. Isabel didn't care where I went. To her, I was just a tool, and lately, she'd decided I wasn't even a good one. After seeing the mediocre makeup I'd done for Jolene earlier, she'd probably written me off as useless. Sure enough, she didn't try to stop me. She just waved me off as if I were an afterthought. I was dying to get out of there. The last thing I wanted was to get dragged into Isabel and Nathan's toxic little war. Their feud was like a wildfire, and I wasn't about to stand around and let the flames spread to me. But leaving too quickly would only make Isabel suspicious, and suspicion was the last thing I needed. So, I stuck around for a little longer, plastering on a polite smile and tossing out a few more sweet words to keep her calm. Isabel's revenge on Nathan was as dramatic as it was ridiculous. She hired Anne, the infamous makeup artist, as her exclusive stylist and paid her a salary several times above the norm. And naturally, the one footing the bill was Nathan, her ever-loyal idiot. By the time I heard that she'd officially signed Anne, I was already sitting in the lobby of another company, preparing for my next interview. What I didn't see coming, though, was this: the company I was interviewing for belonged to him. Phineas. And if that wasn't surprising enough, the man himself actually showed up to conduct the interview. As he walked in, I couldn't help but stare. Up close, Phineas was even more striking than he appeared on screen. But there was something else too, something nagging at me. I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd seen him somewhere before. In my last life, thanks to Isabel's ridiculous jealousy, I'd never had the chance to meet Phineas in person. The closest I'd come was catching glimpses of him on TV, and even then, it was fleeting. But now, standing just a few feet away from him, that strange sense of familiarity hit me hard. Phineas. I blurted out before I could stop myself. Have we met before? The second the words left my mouth, I wanted to slap myself. What was I doing? This was a job interview, not some casual chit-chat. I sounded like I was trying to name-drop a fake connection to get hired. But instead of looking annoyed, Phineas smiled. It wasn't just any smile, either. It was warm, genuine, the kind of smile that felt like stepping into sunlight after a cold day. And somehow, that only made the sense of familiarity stronger. Congratulations, he said, his voice calm and steady. You've passed the interview. From now on, you'll be my personal makeup artist. For a moment, I just stared at him, stunned. Wait. Did I get the job? Just like that? This was the kind of opportunity that most makeup artists could only dream of. It wasn't just about the prestige of working with a superstar, it was an open door to the top of the entertainment world. With Phineas as my client, I'd finally have a real foothold in the industry. And Isabel? She'd have to think twice before coming after me now. Phineas seemed to notice the mix of shock and excitement on my face. His smile softened, his gaze steady as he said, Hannah, I'll be waiting for the day you remember me. I froze. Remember? Before I could ask what he meant, he turned and walked away, his assistant trailing after him. His words lingered in the air, leaving me with more questions than answers. I didn't have time to think about it, though. Someone from the company called me over to start my onboarding, and just like that, I was swept into my new role. As I took in my new surroundings, a wave of relief washed over me. I'd finally done it. I'd escaped Isabel's grasp. From now on, my future was mine to control. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could finally breathe. Chapter 5. While things were going smoothly for me, Isabel was having a hard time. Since the event, her face had been deteriorating, showing signs of rotting. She was preparing to join a film crew and didn't have time for cosmetic treatments. She could only rely on Anmi to cover it up with thick foundation. Anmi's skills were excellent, making Isabel look radiant temporarily. But this didn't last long. Shortly after joining the crew, Anmi took leave. Isabel, unwilling to offend her, reluctantly agreed. Anmi initially took 3 days off, but nearly a week passed with no contact. One day, Isabel discovered her face was rotting, emitting a foul smell. Her most prized possession, her face, was ruined. She became frantic, applying more foundation to cover the rot, but it was futile. Just then, Jolene, called by the director, walked in on Isabel's ugly state. Jolene was secretly delighted, wondering how Isabel had ended up like this. Seeing Jolene, Isabel panicked, knocking her makeup products to the floor. A bottle rolled to Jolene's feet, picked up by her makeup assistant, who immediately noticed the problem. The assistant exclaimed, "This substandard makeup is dangerous. Anyone using it will have a rotting face." Hearing this, Isabel grabbed the assistant's arm, her face twisted in anger. "What did you say? How did you know my face is rotting?" The assistant, in pain, stammered, "This makeup is clearly unsafe. Even a low-level makeup artist like me knows that. This type of makeup is banned. Though it gives a perfect finish, it causes rotting after one use." Isabel became even more frantic. Her first thought wasn't to confront Anmi but to blame me. Her rotting face was my fault. Jolene, seeing Isabel's state, couldn't help but mock. "Didn't your makeup artist friend warn you? Now you're a mess, while she's thriving with the actor. People might think you two were just fair weather friends. Hearing that I was now working with the actor she admired and blaming me for her ruined face, Isabel's hatred for me reached its peak. She wanted to tear me apart. Seeing Jolene's mocking face, Isabel suddenly calmed down. Jolene, don't you hate Hannah too? Remember how she made you look so plain at the event, embarrassing you in front of your sponsor? Now your resources have dwindled. Don't you hate her? Jolene naturally hated me. Initially, she thought my skills were mediocre. But when I quickly moved to work with the actor and created many standout looks for him, Jolene realized she had been deceived. At the event, her sponsor abandoned her, and her resources dwindled. If not for her contract with the current film, she might have left the industry. Seeing Jolene persuaded, Isabel continued. Why don't we team up? We can't let Hannah have all the glory. The two quickly agreed and began plotting against me. While preparing Phineas's makeup, I received a call from him. Don't look at the trending topics. Hannah, don't look at the trending topics. Wait for me to come back. Phineas's anxious voice made me uneasy. He was supposed to be at a new film's press conference, not rushing back. Why didn't he want me to see the trending topics? After hanging up, I immediately checked the trending topics. The top trend was about me. Actor's personal assistant Hannah causes facial rot. Isabel accuses her friend of sabotage. Isabel claims Hannah controlled her. Former friends turn against each other over a man. Just like in my previous life, Isabel had targeted me again. Seeing the comments filled with curses, I couldn't stop trembling. Despite trying to stay away from Isabel in this life, she still wouldn't let me go. Then, my parents called. We don't have a daughter like you. How could you use substandard makeup on someone? Don't contact us again. We're cutting ties. I listened numbly as they hung up. Why? My parents had always favored my brother. Initially, they opposed my career as a makeup artist, wanting me to stay close so they could exploit me. After much resistance, they reluctantly agreed. Whenever I had nothing to offer, they abandoned me without hesitation. Why did Isabel hate me so much? Why wouldn't she leave me alone? Tears welled up, falling onto my phone screen. Chapter 6. A warm embrace enveloped me. Phineas held me quietly, letting me cry in his arms. After a long while, I finished venting my emotions. Realizing I had cried in Phineas's arms for so long, I felt embarrassed. Sorry, Phineas, I got your clothes dirty. Pausing, I continued. If you're worried about being implicated, we can terminate the contract now. Phineas stared at me silently, making me uncomfortable. Finally, he spoke with a sigh. Silly, if I were afraid of being implicated, I wouldn't have rushed back. He feared I would break down like in my previous life. But this time, I was only briefly saddened. After all, I was determined to seek revenge in this life. I wouldn't let Isabel and her cronies off. With Phineas's help, the trending topics were removed. Isabel quickly started a live stream. In the stream, her face was contorted, unable to hide the rot. She cried, accusing me of controlling her for years. As a friend for decades, I never thought she'd use substandard makeup on me because I refused to be controlled. Now my face is ruined. Boo-hoo! Jolene stood beside Isabel, confirming she had witnessed my control over Isabel as a colleague. She claimed she encouraged Isabel to speak out against me. Netizens praised Jolene for her righteousness, expressing sympathy for Isabel. Seeing the netizens believe her, Isabel continued, revealing that my boyfriend harassed her, though she didn't name Nathan. Hannah's boyfriend harassed me, and she ignored it. She threatened to ruin me if I told anyone. Those days of harassment were the most painful of my life. She released our chat records and photos, along with evidence of Nathan's supposed harassment, heavily censored. These evidences sparked outrage online. People couldn't believe a friend could be so cruel. They flooded Isabel's live stream with sympathy and cursed me on my social media. Phineas, worried about my reaction, was relieved to see I remained calm. The chat records were a mix of truth and lies. With Phineas's help, I found someone to remove the censorship from Isabel's evidence. Then, I posted the uncensored evidence on my account. Seeing me post, netizens were furious. They flooded my comments, dragging Nathan into the fray. Isabel, still crying in her live stream, noticed the comments shifting. She saw my name and Nathan's appearing in the comments. Her heart sank as Nathan called. She wanted to ignore it but accidentally answered. Nathan's voice boomed in the live stream. "You bitch, how dare you slander me? You say I'm not your boyfriend and accuse me of harassment. Just wait, I'll ruin you." Before Isabel could respond, Nathan posted on social media. Chapter 7. Hello everyone. I'm Nathan, Isabel's boyfriend. I can't believe Isabel slandered me to break up with me. Here is the evidence of our relationship. Please judge rationally. Nathan's post included bank transfers to Isabel and intimate photos and videos. In the photos and videos, Isabel looked satisfied, showing no signs of unwillingness or harassment. Netizens were stunned by Nathan's explicit evidence. In my previous life, Isabel had done the same, but without involving Nathan. Now, with Nathan implicated, he turned against her immediately. Perhaps it was also because Isabel's face was ruined. Nathan and Isabel were busy fighting, and netizens, distracted by the scandal, forgot about me. At this moment, Anmi posted on social media. In her post, she admitted using substandard makeup that caused Isabel's face to rot and shared their contract. She apologized and asked for another chance. After Anmi had been missing for a while, I intercepted her attempt to flee abroad, following her previous life's trajectory. I threatened to expose her to the first celebrity she harmed if she didn't comply. Knowing that celebrity's power, Anmi had no choice but to follow my instructions and confess. After her confession, many other victims spoke out. Their faces showed varying degrees of rot, similar to Isabel's. In my previous life, they didn't dare speak out until a powerful celebrity did, but by then, Anmi had fled abroad. This time, after Anmi's confession, I immediately called the police. Anmi was arrested and faced legal consequences and the victim's retribution. Netizens, following the clues, realized I wasn't responsible for Isabel's rotting face. They turned against Isabel, calling her a liar. Isabel, still trying to slander me, was met with my counterattack. I released a carefully edited video of our conversation at the event. In the video, Isabel falsely accused me and slapped me, while I didn't retaliate. How could someone like me control Isabel? Netizens, now angry on my behalf, flooded Isabel's live stream with curses. No matter what Isabel said, they no longer believed her. Nathan continued to release damaging evidence against her. Even Jolene, who supported Isabel, was told to leave the entertainment industry by netizens. Isabel and Jolene ended their live stream in disgrace. They were kicked out of Nathan's father's company, and their endorsements and roles were cancelled. Facing huge debts, they were forced to leave the industry. Nathan was also removed from his position by his father, who chose an illegitimate son as his successor. Nathan was effectively placed under house arrest, unable to appear in public. I didn't know if the illegitimate son would spare Nathan, given Nathan's past actions against him and his mother. Isabel disappeared, and no one knew where she went. 3 months later, I won a makeup award for my designs. As I got out of the car to attend the award ceremony, a car sped towards me. I couldn't dodge in time, but Phineas pulled me away, getting hit by the car instead. Chapter 8. Seeing Phineas covered in blood, my heart ached. I didn't want anything to happen to him. I didn't want him to get hurt. Over the past few months, I realized I had fallen for this caring man. Isabel was dragged out of the car. Seeing she had hit the wrong person, she showed no remorse, laughing maniacally. "Hannah, if I can't have it, neither can you. You're a burden, dragging everyone down." Before she could finish, I slapped her. "That slap was for what you owe me. You." Isabel tried to speak, but I slapped her again. "That slap was for what you owe Phineas." Isabel looked at me in disbelief. I wiped my hands and ignored her, focusing on Phineas. Isabel couldn't escape the law for attempted murder. But Phineas needed immediate medical attention. At the hospital, seeing Phineas unconscious but out of danger, I felt immense relief. If not for him, I would be the one lying in the hospital bed. My best friend of over a decade had easily betrayed me, but Phineas treated me so well. He stayed by my side during my lowest moments. Even this award was achieved with his encouragement. I didn't want anything to happen to Phineas. Thinking about it, I fell asleep. In my dream, I recalled my childhood. I had always wanted to be a makeup artist. By a trash can, I saw young Phineas. He had a large scar on his face, seemingly from a heavy blow. Young Phineas buried his face in his knees, crying softly. I gently touched him, and he looked up in confusion. I took out my tools and painted a large flower around his scar. "Look, you're beautiful now. Flowers are growing around your scar." Phineas smiled through his tears, eager to see the flower. As a child, Phineas often had scars from his father's abuse. Everyone called him ugly, but I extended a hand of friendship. Later, his mother couldn't endure the abuse and left with Phineas. I never saw him again. In my dream, I saw Phineas watching over me in my previous life. Even at the event, he spoke to Jolene because he recognized my makeup style. When I was cyberbullied, Phineas was abroad and didn't hear about it until it was too late. In my dream, I saw him rushing to save me before I fell, but he was too late. He watched in agony as I fell, vowing revenge against Isabel and her cronies. He never married, dedicating his life to avenging me. I woke up with tears in my eyes. A warm hand wiped my tears away, and a familiar voice spoke. "Don't cry, Hannah. You'll ruin your beauty." I cried tears of joy, hugging Phineas tightly. "Phineas, I remember you." After Phineas was discharged, Isabel was sentenced to 3 years in prison. Looking at him, I felt warmth in my heart. After betrayal and death, I never thought I could find love in this life. It felt wonderful. The end.